Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Green here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about Dimir Mill Control, a deck that I've been working on for quite some time, and I'm finally ready to share it with you. There's a brand new one-hit combo that we can do with Dimir Control, and I'm really excited to talk about it today. As always, at the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this deck? Is there a specific card that I should have put in this deck that I did not? Or do you have suggestions for upcoming videos? Just let me know in the comment section. Okay, so Dimir Mill Control. I worked on a lot of different iterations of this deck, and I think the version I came up with is the most competitive by far. So we are playing Dimir Control, but what we're also trying to do is we're trying to do a one-shot combo with Singularity Rupture, brand new card from Edge of Eternities, and our one copy of Traumatize with Fraying Sanity. So Fraying Sanity says, at the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards of their library into their graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into the graveyard from anywhere this turn. So when we mill half our opponent's deck, we're just going to mill the other half, and then it's going to be game over from there. The cool thing about Singularity Rupture, though, as well, is it's also a board wipe. Traumatize, although it's sweet and it is one less mana than Singularity Rupture, on its own, like, milling half our opponent's deck usually isn't just quite enough, so Singularity Rupture also acts as a board wipe, so that way we're able to at least control the board while also trying to, complete what we're trying to do, and that is mill our opponent out of the game. So let's go and talk about the rest of the deck here. We're playing a whole bunch of interaction because, after all, we are a Dimir control deck. So we're playing 4 copies of Thoughtseize because the card is just... it's awesome. It's Thoughtseize, one of the best cards in the entire format. We're also playing 4 copies of Fatal Push, 2 copies of Go for the Throat, and 2 copies of Drown in the Loch as removal. Although Drown in the Loch also acts as a counterspell if we have enough cards in our opponent's graveyard, which I was playing 4 copies of this originally, but we're not playing a lot of like early game mill for the most part, so I didn't want to play 4 copies of this. I just went with 2. We're also playing 4 copies of Censor as our other removal spell, or sorry, not, well, I mean, it's technically removal on the stack, but our other counter spell. I really like this card because we can cycle it when we don't want it anymore, and most of the time in the early game, we can get our opponents with this quite easily because opponents are trying to, be mana efficient and tap out and things like that, so big fan of Censor. Then we're also playing 4 copies of Consult the Star Charts. I really love this card, another awesome card from Edge of Eternities. I think it's better than Memory Deluge. Like, it's cheaper. Like, I mean, you're going to kick it anyway, so it's going to be 4 no matter what. But I really do like Consult the Star Charts. I think this card is awesome. Helps us refill, get some extra removal, extra counter spells, and also helps us dig for our combo. So definitely a huge fan of Consult the Star Charts. We are also playing a couple different Planeswalkers in our deck that also really help us for what we're trying to do. We are playing 4 copies of Narset Partervales. Card is great because it doesn't let our opponent draw a bunch of extra cards and help them get back into the game, but it's also great at helping us dig for our combo pieces, so definitely a huge fan of Narset. We're also playing the 2 copies of Ashiok Dream Render. I like this card because obviously it helps mill our opponent, which, is what we're trying to do with this deck, but it's also great because, it is also graveyard hate on a stick because our opponents, some decks, they want us to mill them. They're going to get a bunch of extra value from that potentially. So being able to play Ashiok and exile our opponent's graveyard in our main board can be definitely very, very huge. So huge fan of the 2 copies of Ashiok as well in the deck. So that's the entire main board except for our lands. We're playing 25 lands. It's a relatively straightforward Dimir mana base. We are playing 4 copies of Darkslick Shores, 4 copies of the freshly reprinted Watery Grave, and 2 copies of Undercity Sewers. We are also playing 4 copies of Shipwreck Marsh and 2 copies of Clearwater Pathway as our main dual lands. We're also playing 2 copies of Field of Ruin just because it's good at taking out pesky man lands and utility lands. We're also playing 1 Otawara and 1 Takenuma, and 1 Gyre Reach Sanitarium. After all, we are playing Narset, so it makes sense to just play the 1 copy of Gyre Reach Sanitarium to try to lock our opponent out of the game. And then rounding out our lands, we are playing 2 basic islands and 2 basic swamps. And as our spicy basic lands of the day, I'm not familiar with this artist. I don't know how much work they've done with Magic, but I really love these basics. And, not even just like the non-full arts and the full arts, obviously. I think Edge of Eternities has some of the best basic land artwork in the entire game. I really do. I think that it looks so nice. Like any of these basics look really, really good. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be picking up a whole bunch of these Edge of Eternities basics in the future because they look awesome. So the next thing we have to talk about is our sideboard, which Although relatively straightforward, Dimir control is very unique in the sense that it's very, very customizable. If you take a couple of different Dimir control players' lists and you compare their sideboards, they're all going to look different. So if my sideboard looks a little bit different than yours, that's totally fine. Feel free to adjust this based on your local metagame or what you're running into on Magic Arena. If you're trying to specifically get after one or two decks, feel free to go ahead and change up this sideboard. But we are playing 2 copies of Cling to Dust as some extra graveyard hate. It's a little bit more specific. It's not like a mass graveyard hate spell, but I really do like this card. We're also playing 2 copies of Aether Gust. Hates on the red and green decks a little bit. 3 copies of Anoint with Affliction. It's great because it's an exile effect, so it's good against cards like Heartfire Hero and other cards that really love having death triggers, so just a great card in general. We're also playing 3 copies of Mystical Dispute, good against all the opposing blue decks, and you want to know what? Those blue decks are going to be bringing in their own Mystical Disputes, so that's why we got to bring in our Mystical Disputes. We're also playing 2 copies of Path of Peril. I really do love this card. It's just so good at being able to clean up all those early creatures that potentially could kind of, get us out of the game before we can really get going. And then we're playing 3 copies of Chrome Host Seed Shark. Blue control decks in Pioneer love this card, and I don't blame them. You can get so much value from the Incubate tokens, so it totally makes sense that we're playing a few copies of this in the sideboard. So the next thing that we have to talk about is the tips and strategies section. So I always love to go over all the different decks, like all the tips and strategies, in the sense that it can help you maybe understand something you really didn't fully realize if you're looking to pick this deck up for the first time, or maybe just some info that, you really didn't think about, as you're watching this deck tech. But I've got 2 things that I want to talk about specifically. So the first thing is Fraying Sanity's text. A lot of people don't realize that it triggers at the beginning of each end step. It's not just ours, it's our opponent's. And that's whenever, cards from anywhere go into their graveyard. It doesn't matter if they cast like an instant or if they milled or they cracked a Fabled Passage. It doesn't matter. So keep an eye on this. It might not always matter like the extra little chips away with Fraying Sanity, but do keep that in mind. It can happen. I've seen it happen. So just kind of keep that in mind with Fraying Sanity. The other thing I have to mention with Fraying Sanity especially is don't rush the combo, okay? We are a Dimir control list, okay? We're trying to draw some cards, we're trying to counter opponent's spells, not let them really, just have them spin their wheels, can't get anything going, and then we can finally take them out of the game. We're not trying to rush it. Don't feel like you have to play Fraying Sanity on turn 3, because if we play it and we just tap out on turn 3, there's a chance that our opponent, just all of a sudden they end step, flash a couple of things in, and then untap, and then all of a sudden we're so far behind, oh, we don't have a board wipe, all of a sudden we're dead. So don't feel like you have to rush your Fraying Sanity combo. Just keep that in mind if you're looking to play this deck. The last thing that I have to talk about today is the budget options for the deck. It's honestly pretty simple. You can swap out Thoughtseize and Consult the Star Charts for cards like Duress as well as Memory Deluge. It's very simple, easy swaps, still very good cards in their own right. You can also play some budget dual lands like Drowned Catacombs as well as Underground River. We can swap out like Undercity Sewers and some of those, expensive dual lands that can make the format a little bit challenging to get into. But the current list as it's constructed right now is only $223 US, which is super, super cheap for a fully fledged Dimir control list. That's very cheap for control. Normally control has some of the more expensive cards in it, and that's including Thoughtseize and Takenuma and Otawara and things like that. So honestly, pretty cheap. But I was able to get the budget list down to 61 US. The only non-land cards that I swapped out were the ones that I mentioned before with Duress and Memory Deluge. I also did cut some of the utility lands, and I did put in cards like Drowned Catacomb, obviously, as well as Underground Sea. Or not Underground Sea, that would be really expensive. Underground River. But yeah, this deck was really fun to make. I don't post a lot of control lists here on the channel just because it's very rare that they really ever change their identity. Occasionally it gets a new card, for instance, like Consult the Star Charts, where it's just okay, we have a new card draw. All right, we're still the same deck. But I think it's really cool with Singularity Rupture because it takes it from 2 different axes. It's a board wipe, but it's also can act as our win condition for only 6 mana, which is pretty sweet. So definitely a huge fan of this list, and definitely let me know what you think in the comment section below. And that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Saranoki, Michael D, our premium channel member, The Common Cold, Jeremy P, and BG Stilts. If you're interested in being a channel member, it starts at $1 US a month, and you gain access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane, thanks for watching this video, and hope to catch you in the next one.